The acute crisis of the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic is behind us. However, as we prepare for the 2026-27 school year, the U.S. pre-K-12 school system continues to grapple with deep, historical challenges that existed long before the lockdowns. Some of the unique pressures of the last few years have crystallized into permanent structural realities for school districts across the country. Administrators are constantly trying to balance demands from their immediate internal stakeholders, the students, the parents, and the teachers in the classrooms. At the same time, they must answer to powerful external forces, including teachers' unions, higher education institutions, politicians, and private sector employers. Each of these groups pursues specific results within the same localized districts, creating a landscape of competing demands and conflicting outcomes. Navigating this environment requires a systemic understanding of myriad forces to move beyond the limitations of reactive policy. To analyze an institution as massive and localized as the U.S. public education, we need a formal framework to organize the variables. We refer to this organizational model as the taxonomy. Our taxonomy is constructed by linking 6 nodes that represent the loci for institutional inputs and outputs, both with tangible and abstract attributes. 3 nodes provide institutional capacity: school finance, school governance, and educator human capital. The other 3 nodes represent the tools and practice and outcomes: curriculum, instruction, and student learning. The nodes operate as a deeply linked network. A shift in the parameters of school finance inevitably causes ripples across the other 5 nodes. Any accurate analysis of the education system has to trace these impacts across the entire structure, rather than trying to solve classroom issues in a vacuum. Our project, UnderstandingSchools.com, identifies the challenges impacting practices within the U.S. pre-K-12 education system, as most often reported in educational publications and general media. Then we analyze the challenges from an activity theory perspective, looking for emerging changes and opportunities for change within the system. We then disseminate our findings through YouTube videos and on our website. This work requires an honest, unbiased, and comprehensive investigation into institutionalized, mediated practices that define the system. It also requires a thoughtful dialogue among all stakeholders. Our purpose is to motivate and be an active participant in those conversations. To see the specific methodology driving this analysis, you can watch the research design video currently available on UnderstandingSchools.com. We strongly encourage you to add your voice to this conversation by leaving comments. We recognize that education is a deeply personal and emotional subject for many people. Because of that, we commit to strict objectivity. We welcome alternative views, and if you see an error in our assumptions or data, let us know and we will review them. Our ultimate goal is collective learning. We want to move the conversation past reactive political debates and toward objective system analysis. Let's introduce our process by providing a brief overview of the challenges relating to school funding and governance by introducing a much-reported post-pandemic issue school districts are facing as they enter the 2026-27 academic year. This structural diagram illustrates the 3 governing levels in our federalist society. Under this model, policy mandates and strict accountability requirements flow continuously downward from the federal and state levels, directly onto the local district. Simultaneously, localized funding mechanisms flow through complex, overlapping channels and conditions within that exact same hierarchy. Under this model of governance, local school districts do not operate with total autonomy. Their decisions are constrained by both state and federal government policy and funding mandates. Political and policy changes following election cycles can impact system disruptions. New education policy at the federal or state level can impact practice at local levels.
the process of implementing policy into practice often stresses resources and is disruptive in execution. Funding practices under the Federalist model present additional challenges to the system. This dual-axis graph shows federal funding shifts and enrollment from 2020 to 2027. The first data line reveals a sharp drop-off. This cliff represents the expiration of federal pandemic relief funds. For local budgets that had grown reliant on that capital, this creates an immediate, massive deficit. Demographics also matter. As the second curve shows, student enrollment is steadily declining nationwide over the exact same period. This downward enrollment curve mathematically compounds the funding cliff. Since baseline state funding is tied to headcount, fewer students means fewer state dollars. These three structural shifts collide precisely where governance and funding intersect, redefining the operational baseline for local districts. To see the true cost of this collision, we must bring human capital, curriculum, instruction, and student learning back into the equation. The triad of pressures squeezing funding and governance cannot be contained. That stress inevitably pushes outward onto the rest of the system. These outward pressures force difficult, unavoidable adjustments in educator human capital, specifically driving down teacher retention rates as budgets tighten and policy stress increases. A financial or governance deficit inevitably becomes a classroom deficit. Understanding this structural squeeze is the non-negotiable prerequisite for solving downstream issues with instruction or curriculum. Throughout the Understanding Schools video series, we will trace these specific connections. In upcoming videos, we will take a deeper dive into the exact internal mechanics and data inside each of the 6 nodes. We will detail how governance in a federalist society sets the foundation for policy and accountability. But to understand the system, we have to follow the money. Our next major topic will be school funding. To navigate the complexities of 2026 and beyond, we will view the education system for what it is, a highly complex, interconnected, engineered structure.